Welcome to Electric Petrolhead, and welcome to possibly one of the coolest electric cars on the road. This was a Ferrari 308, which was converted by electric classic cars. You may have seen it on TV in the Vintage Voltage series. And the car recently went back to Wales for some upgrades. So I went over to have a drive, thanks to the incredibly generous owner, Peter. And we had a look around the car and looked at all the new upgrades. And I thought I'd share it in this video.
Okay, Andy, so this is the current state of the cockpit, especially since we just had it some upgrades done over the winter back at Electric Classic Cars. So you want to look at the dashboard first. We've now got, although they look original, they're modern gauges, work off the CAN bus. So over here we've got the current display, so that shows the current going in and out of the motor, because obviously regen, you come down here and that's the power going in. We've got a temperature gauge that's reading the temperature of the motor, because the electric motors get hot as well, so there is a cooling system for that. We'll look at that later. This here is the battery capacity gauge, straightforward 0 to 100%. And in this it's easy. I know it's 150 miles, so it's you just times the percentage by 1.5 and you've got your range. And then over here you've got a straightforward speedo, and it's got a little LCD mileage gauge. And if I switch 12 volts on, you'll see the little dance, and that's reading out. And then up here, I think the rest of it's pretty much the same. Indicators, wipers, lights, all doing the same things as they used to do. The key switch, it's got the original key switch, Ferrari branded key, and that's straightforward. Ignition on, turns the 12 volt systems on, and then when you flick it into what would have been the start mode, there's a little clunk. You may or may not have heard that, and that brings the main contactor in, so now the 400 volt system to the Tesla drive unit is live. If you want to come to the centre, there's still a redundant gauge here. This is the old oil temperature gauge. That's not doing anything at the moment. We need to find something to fill that in. The clock still works, that's the original clock. Behind that, where the ashtray used to be, and no one needs an ashtray anymore, we've got the battery management system display, which is telling us what the average cell voltage is, the total pack voltage, state of charge, and it will scroll through. You can look at each individual cell, you know, just like you can on a modern car. But that's the battery management system. Just behind here, this switch that's not got a label on it yet is the heater switch. We had a heater fitted this winter. I thought when we were developing the car originally, I wouldn't need a heater. It's a summer use only car, tops off most of the time, but actually you do need a heater to demist the windscreen. So the heater works, the fan still works. Hazards, wipe speed high and low, they're all still doing what they should do. Manual aerial switch. Back in the days you had an aerial that went up and down, and just up here we've got an original 1980s radio mobile in there with, yeah, it's 1982 madness. You can't beat a bit of 1982. These were the old heater controls, so you had left and right temperature, left and right direction, defrost, what have you, but they're currently disconnected. They don't do anything. But they still look nice, and the rear fog works. And the other thing that's missing is the old handbrake lever. Used to be here. That's gone now because we've got an electric handbrake, which anyone who owns a 308, 328, any Ferrari of this vintage knows the handbrakes are useless. So having that, this thing now actually stops on hills. So I think that's it.
Yeah.
Internally. In the boot, where the engine used to be, we've got the main Tesla drive unit right at the bottom here. So on the left hand side here is where the electronics is, and the right hand side of the unit is the actual electric motor, and that's driving a central, well, you can just about see it down here. This is the differential, and then the shafts go out. So it fits in really, really nicely. It did such a good job of cradling it in there.
So was anything taken over from the petrol in terms of like drive shafts or anything like that?
No, the drive shafts have to be new because they've got to be Tesla at one end and Ferrari at the other, so they were custom built.
Brilliant.
The mountings are it's on the original motor mounts. They've had to build this frame here using roll cage technology to mount the battery on top of there, but also to cradle the engine in there. This is obviously a battery box, as you can see. Now, this is the main fuse. I'll show you what a fuse on an electric car looks like, because they have conventional fuses. So I've got a spare somewhere. I must find out where it is. So the other main battery box is this one here. That holds most of the batteries, so it's central and very low as possible. So it keeps the centre of gravity low, it keeps the weight distribution right. The other thing that a lot of people always get surprised at is we've got radiators here. There's two radiators, one either side. That's to cool the motor and the motor electronics. You're dealing with 450 kilowatts, and even with 95% efficiency, you're still dissipating 6, 7, 8 kilowatts of heat. So that's still a lot of heat to be dissipated. So there's a little header tank here and the little cooling system, and you see all the tubes everywhere.
And obviously you've got the original air intakes.
Yeah, so those air intakes are being used. One used to be for the oil cooler. So that's just been incorporated into the layout in the engine bay. You can see obviously the springs and the suspension had to be changed because the weight distribution is different. So we've just got some adjustable racing suspension there, which again helps keep the weight distribution. 12 volt battery, you don't need a big one, you just need one to run the 12 volt systems, and then all the other electronics are neatly spaced here. This was all upgraded during the last upgrade over the winter. There's a DC to DC converter underneath it. You can't see it, it's right underneath the back. It takes the 400 volts from the main battery pack, converts it to 12 volts DC to charge the 12 volt battery and run the 12 volt systems.
Cool.
So yes, you don't have an alternator generating the voltage, you have a 400 volt battery pack.
Yeah, quite well looked after there.
Yeah. And that's it. The other interesting thing about this car is a usable car now. Obviously you used to have the V8 engine here, the exhaust system used to run under the back, and underneath this space here, the boot, let me keep that, charging cables. So the exhaust was under here. This used to get incredibly hot. You could cook your dinner in here. Obviously it doesn't do that now. You've got usable luggage space. So, practical usable car. Okay, so now in the front of the car, this is one of the main battery boxes. I think there's 6 battery units in here. It was an important part of the car rebuild. Richard really wanted to get the weight distribution 50-50 because I didn't appreciate it at the time, but he knew that doing that would make the handling of the car so much better. And I think you've just experienced that, even though we just went out for a short ride.
So was it a case of he put the motor in and all the things that had to be in a specific place?
Yeah,
and then play around with motors?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, play around with the batteries and where they go.
Play around with the battery, and then the suspension settings. So one of the main battery boxes, this has been added. This is a blast vent, so if one of the cells goes, it can vent through here and doesn't take the rest of the battery box with it. These two things here are chargers, but they're 2.5 kilowatt chargers, so I've got 5 kilowatts of charging. One of the downsides of having a retrofitted car is that I don't have rapid charging. I've merely got fast charging, but that's fine. A heater's been added. You can't see it. It's in the depths underneath here, but there's it's got to be a 400 volt heater because it works off the main 400 volt system. By the way, these cables, when people see these cables, they think they're multi-core cables. That's not. That's one core. It's got to handle 1,000 amps, so it's big cables. I think that's all there is to see at the front.
So how do you charge it?
Right, so where the fuel port used to be, there's a little, this whole flap section opens here. That used to be the petrol filler, it is now Type 2 charging socket.
But it is quite simple to retrofit.
Yes. Yeah, they're about the same size as a normal petrol cap, so
that's convenient.
that's fine. And then I've got my Tesla charger here. We just plug that in, and the screen lights up inside there, because the battery management system's awake whilst the charging's going. And there's your Tesla charger.
Brilliant.
Running down.
So firstly, thank you so much to Peter for inviting me over to drive the car. The car's just incredible. I honestly went into it with a little bit of trepidation along the lines of, you never meet your heroes. Because as a lifelong petrolhead, this is the kind of car I want. You know, I want to have a car that feels like a classic petrol car, that has the smells and just feels special. It doesn't feel like a mass-produced car. It feels very special, and it's gorgeous, and the performance is incredible. Quite a lot faster in every way than the original. But I had that trepidation of what would it feel like, and it felt better than I was expecting. If you subscribe to the channel and keep an eye out, I'll do a longer video about my thoughts on this, because it's not a simple thing. It's something that a lot of people think is sacrilege, you know, taking the heart out of a Ferrari, but the end result is like it feels like it was meant to be electric all along. It's just incredible. You know, until you drive one, you don't really appreciate how good it is. So well done to Electric Classic Cars in Wales. They're the main people you need to speak to if you are looking to do a similar conversion. Thank you again to Peter, and see you on another video. Thanks a lot. Bye.